Well, as graduation gets closer, it's time to transition to that first job post education. And when you think about that, what do you expect to get from that job? How long should you expect to be there before maybe looking at that next potential position? The term job hopping is one that comes into play and can have different meanings for employees and employers. Matthew Bidwell is a professor of management here at the Wharton School, and he joins us to discuss the topic. Matthew, always great to talk with you. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you, Dan.
As always, great to see you as well. All right. So, for those soon to be graduates, and I'm sure maybe you've had these questions at this time of the year before, what is the expectation that they should think about from a first job?
I think a first job, it's a starter job. I mean, I think if you think about what people are trying to get out of it, it's not the forever job, right? It's not the kind of I expect to settle down and spend the rest of my life here. I think what you want to be getting out of it, you want to be building skills, so learning things that will help you get your next role. A really important thing is learning about yourself as well. I think it should be a job where you're starting to get a sense of what kind of work you like, what you should be pursuing next, and what kind of roles maybe aren't going to work for you. Hopefully, it's also a role where you're starting to build a reputation networks. But I think those early jobs really are stepping stones.
You hear about the 3-year window being brought into play in terms of how long maybe you should think about that first job, or some people other jobs as well. Is that a fair assessment, that that first 3 years of really getting to understand yourself and your work and maybe the career line that you're going down?
I'm not sure it's 3 years exactly. I mean, I would say probably that the early to mid 20s are a time for figuring out who you want to be and where you want to go. And I would say that usually means moving around a little bit. I mean, it's weird to actually, I mean, generally, I don't advocate job hopping. Generally,
Right.
my message to people is employers care about stickability. They don't want people who are always jumping around. But I think it's important to really emphasize that doesn't apply so much to people at the beginning of their careers. At the beginning of your career, people expect you to move around so much.
Yeah.
Somebody in their mid 20s, when they look at resume and say they've already held 3 jobs, they're not going to have a heart attack. If, on the other hand, you're in your late 30s and you continue to move like that, they're going to look at it very differently. So, yeah, I think that kind of beginning of the career, moving around is pretty normal. And I think you should be much less concerned about doing so.
So there is to a degree, an expectation from the employer that this is part of the mix when you're talking about a first, maybe a first job or a second job, but that job hopper term probably does have a negative connotation to it later on in one's career.
Yeah, I mean, when you hire somebody, it takes a while to get them up to speed. And so for an employer, you're hiring somebody hoping they'll stay. And to be honest, even kind of that first job, employers are hoping you will stay,
Right.
sometimes for quite a while. So we're not hiring people that we expect to leave instantly. And so if you've done that multiple times, employers will start to get nervous. But again, early in the career, they understand people are still trying to figure this out a little bit. And so I think it's less of an issue at that point.
Well, with the economy that we have right now, does that impact the want to move and this concept of job hopping?
Um, yeah, I think it does in two different ways, right? I mean, I think the big thing about the economy we have right now, everyone's going on about this low hire, low fire economy. It is harder to get a job than it was a couple of years ago, than it has been for most of the last 10 years. Um, and sadly, that particularly affects obviously new entrants to the job market who are looking for jobs for the first time. Um, what that means is probably a lot of people are going to end up in a job that's not as good as the one that they might have been able to find in a more vibrant job market. Um, and so we do know, for example, people who graduate in recessions, they tend sadly to have kind of persistently lower earnings for a while because you start off in a job that's not so good, maybe a less well paid occupation than you otherwise would have got. And there's kind of it's hard then to move up. And so it does mean if you're finding a struggle to get a job, if you do end up with one that's maybe not what you would have hoped to get, you do then need to kind of be keeping on searching in the hope that you'll then move up. And so, yeah, I think it means that it's less likely that first job is going to be the one you really want. obviously it also means it's harder to move up. And
Yeah.
so kind of more of a push to look for the next thing, but more of a challenge as
So
well.
we've talked about this from the perspective of job hopping, but there is also, I would assume, a component of those people who maybe stay in a position too long and don't look to make that move faster. What do you say to those people?
I mean, it's not always a problem. I think, I don't think you want to move for the sake of
Yeah.
it. One of the things, again, we see in research is there's not generally a strong relationship between how much you move and how much you end up getting paid. Um, if you start off in a poorly paid job, then you need to move to end up in something that's more rewarding. But if you start off in a reasonably well paid job, you don't necessarily need to move. I think if you feel your career is stagnating, like you're not getting the growth that you want, you're not moving up inside the organization, those sorts of things, that probably is a sign that you want to move sooner rather than later. But I don't think that people need to feel, oh my God, I haven't moved, I ought to move,
Yeah.
if you're somewhere where you like the work and you're doing well.
Does AI factor into this as we move forward as well?
Today, probably not. Um, Coming up, who knows? It probably, I mean, I'm sure it increases the value of adaptability in all sorts of ways. I think employers are looking for their employees to really make use of these tools to be on the leading edge. Um, Among the almost infinite range of unknowns around AI is how destructive it's going to be of kind of current companies. Are we going to see a lot of companies go out of business as they are overtaken by AI new entrants? Don't know. It's plausible. In that case, if we see a lot of this kind of creative destruction, it really places a big premium on adaptability.
Right.
The more that you're at risk that your current job goes away, the more you want to be constantly thinking, am I building the skills that will help me get that next job?
What are the things, I'll finish up on this, that you say to your students about this time in their lives, going from college into the workforce? And obviously knowing that every student is going to be different, but there are probably some tenets that are probably similar just kind of across the board.
Um, yeah, I think about the career in phases, right? I mean, I think there is kind of the middle of your career, actually, you're going to do better by finding the right place and kind of settling there, staying there, building a career there. That's what you're often aiming for. The people who do well are the people who really find that right fit with an organization, build their career there. The early stage of your career are about trying to find that. And so I think in that early phase, you're establishing yourself, you're learning about who you are, what kind of organization you want to work for, and you're starting to build the skills and the reputation that will make you attractive. And so it's an important phase in your career, but it's probably more than any other time a phase where you don't want to be too afraid of making mistakes. It's a good time to take risks, learn about yourself before you start kind of that long climb afterwards.
Matthew, always great to talk to you and get your insight. Thanks very much.
Great to see you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Matthew Bidwell, professor of management here at the Wharton School.